Hey everybody, today I want to go over quickly how to organize your paper. What I'm going to do is treat this like we're writing a rough outline. And what I'm going to do is a general subject for you so that this is applicable to everybody, all 1301, 101, 102, 1302, whatever your code is. This is the basic structure that's expected of most essays in a English class. So hopefully you've already got your formatting done. Please refer to the formatting uh, tutorials for that. If you're working in Microsoft Office, it's pretty easy to do it, and we've already gone over that extensively. Whatever your class code is, for this instance, for say, I'm going to put in this number. Okay, every school has a different code. Every school has a different section, multiple sections. So that's just to show you an example. You want to make sure your date on your paper is correctly formatted, as you see here. Day, 2-digit day, spell out the month, 4-digit year. Space down twice, and then have an interesting title. So you want to make sure your title is interesting. Okay, so now the first part of your paper is the introduction. And what I always recommend students start with for their introduction is a story or anecdote, particularly for the first paper they write. An anecdote is simply another word for a story that illustrates a point. And all good stories, basically, in my opinion, do illustrate a point. So you want to show your reader where the essay is headed. You want to give them a preview of some of the main ideas and topics you're going to deal with. And then you want that to lead into the thesis statement. Now, remember the formula for a thesis statement: subject plus opinion. It has to have those two elements. Now, for the body section of the paper, you typically have three parts. This is sometimes thought of as three paragraphs, but I'm going to insist on you all not thinking about this as three paragraphs, but thinking of it as a loose organizational structure of three sections. And the reason for that is some of your examples may take multiple paragraphs to express, so you want to be careful with limiting yourself to three paragraphs. But if you're following the correct format, you're going to do this structure. Let me give you the notes here. The structure repeats 3 times. You're going to follow the structure, and I mentioned this and go into more detail in a previous lecture. But you're going to have a topic sentence of some sort, and this topic sentence will be a subtopic related to your thesis statement. So a good example to help you think about this is, let's say you're in 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th grade. You had to write these things called three-part thesis statements, where you would say, let's just use Gatorade for example. Gatorade is a nutritious drink because it is low in calories, high in electrolytes, and refreshes you after working out. Okay. So some of you might still feel the need to write a thesis statement like that, but on the college level you really shouldn't be using three-part thesis statements. They're very elementary. So now what you would do is instead say something along the lines like G2, Gatorade G2 is the best drink for athletes. That would be your thesis statement. And then your subtopic, your first subtopic, would deal with the fact that it is a lower calorie drink. So you would say the G2 is a lower calorie drink, and then you would look at the different versions of it, you know, like this one is grape, or you'd look at some kind of different flavor and you'd say, okay, this has so many calories in comparison to Coca-Cola, which is 240 calories per 20-ounce bottle. And you do that, and you'd use those statistics back and forth to create examples. So your subtopic needs to relate to your thesis, and think of this in replacing, as a way of replacing that three-part thesis. Your thesis statement is general enough that it can include subtopics, but it's specific enough that it'll focus your paper. So your subtopics are related to your thesis statement. And then you're going to have an example. And the example comes from, drum roll please, I wish I had a drum to do it, but I don't, research. And remember, right now, for this first paper, we're working on field research, which is interviews and discussions. Those still need to be cited. And future papers, you'll integrate, well, as my second semester composition students are, who will probably watch this video as well, they're integrating examples from stories, from short stories, and from their readings in their textbook. So you're going to start citing other texts as you progress. But the example should always come from research whenever possible. And then you want to explain the example in the context of your thesis. And what I mean by that is explain how the example illustrates your thesis. Even if you're working in definition mode or division and classification or any of these other rhetorical modes that we're going to explore this semester, all rhetorical modes use illustration. That's how they prove their point. So you need to explain how the example illustrates the thesis statement. And then you're going to transition into the next topic sentence. So the next step in all this, and the final step, is the conclusion. And let me say, never, ever, ever use these words in a conclusion. Never write in conclusion. For a college level paper. It's just elementary, okay? If you're writing correctly, we should know this is your conclusion. What you do want to do is answer the so what question. And what I mean by this is, why is this information important? What can we learn from reading this essay? And we want to extend our topic beyond just this moment in time. The conclusion should leave your reader wanting to know more about your topic. And then you also want to reiterate your thesis. That means restate it, but not in exactly the same words as it was previously appeared. Okay? Now, once you've written your paper, you're fairly confident with it, or while you're writing it, you're also going to want to create a works cited page. Now, for the bulk of you, those of you that are in introductory composition classes, the first semester composition classes, all I'm asking you to do is an interview citation, which looks like this. And then you'd have the date. Let's say you did the interview today. Some of you may decide to cite a website. If you decide to cite a website, you need to have our web page. You need to have the last name of the author, the first name of the author, the web page's article title, in quotes, the website in italics, the date of posting, so let's say 12 February 2009. And I'm just making that up, but it needs to be in that format. The word web, and then the date accessed, 17 September. And then if it goes into the second line, you want to do what's called a hanging indent, which if you're watching, you can see me set up. Now, anything you cite that is not anything that you put in your paper that doesn't come directly from you or comes from another source needs to be cited. And it needs to be cited not just in the Works Cited page, it also needs to be cited up here in the paper. So you want to think about this formula from, if you recall, the beginning of the semester we talked about this formula. Introduce, punctuate, document. Now, you'll need to look in your handbook. You all have handbooks that you can use that tell you how to cite, to see how to do this for specific types of sources, because it's different depending on the type of source. Websites sometimes only require the article title. That's another thing some students mess up on. If all you have is a web article, then you just delete this and have the web article. Make sure it's all alphabetical. If there's no author. But typically, I want you to really think about this. Would you believe something that a person wasn't willing to sign? Typically, we ignore websites, or we should be very dubious of a website that does not have an author. Okay? And of course, this is just the starting point. There's a little more information you typically need in here, like publishing organization. You should have that data as well. So whoever paid to publish it, because that helps us determine its validity. Okay, so that is how to organize your paper. Once you start putting it together, of course you'd write it textually. You want to do it in this kind of outline format, but that's visually how I want you to think about the organization of your information. Okay, and be sure you have a works cited page. It's alphabetical. I'll save this and attach it or drop it into any message I send y'all with a link to the video. All right.